Yo, what up though, Detroit? It is I, your lawyer. All right, so I know earlier I made this post and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go live, blah, blah, blah. All right, I considered that. And logistically, that doesn't make any sense for me for a few reasons. Number one, I don't really know live well enough. I think I've probably fucked around with it like 1 or 2 times in my life for real. So I don't know if that saves or doesn't save, and I don't know how to post it. Logistically, too much to consider there. So for the sake of not burdening myself with all of that, I've decided not to do that and to do it as regular posts. And that way also, people can keep up with it. They can follow it easier. If they have questions, they can post questions. Hopefully, for those of you who are supporters of Michael Jackson Bolanos, you guys can repost it and share it and, garner the attention that this actually needs. So with that being said, also, sorry, before we begin, I decided to change the name because earlier I was like, I can't even remember what I just called it on the last post, but I was like, who the fuck is Michael Jackson Bolanos? I don't know what I called it, right? Not doing that. I'm going to call this, who the fuck decided to incarcerate Bolanos? Reason being because when I was thinking about it and I was like, who the fuck did I marry, blah, blah, blah. The who part, the who the fuck part, that was the fucked up person. So the who part here, who the fuck decided to incarcerate Bolanos, that's all the fucked up people. That's everything that's wrong with our fucking criminal justice system. And that's what I want to highlight in the who the fuck decided to incarcerate Bolanos. Boom. Welcome. Episode 1. If you guys hear that, though, that is my dogs. I don't know what the fuck is going on over there. Sneezing or something of the sort. They're fine. Yeah, they're fine. Okay, so let's get right into it. I'm going to start by giving you guys some background. So for anyone who doesn't know about this case, was not privy to it, Michael Jackson Bolanos was undoubtedly acquitted of the murder of Samantha Wall. His trial began in June of 2024. It was a 5-week trial. And for those of you who don't know who Samantha Wall is, Samantha Wall was the president of the downtown Isaac Agree Synagogue here in Detroit. So Michael Jackson Bolanos was acquitted of her murder. It was a 5-week trial, a very rigorous trial. During trial, he was facing 4 counts. One of those counts was first-degree murder with an attached second-degree murder, which he was acquitted of. There was 2 other counts, which we will come back to in a later episode. We won't touch on that now. And then count 4, which was lying to a peace officer. He was found guilty of that. The jury convicted him of lying to a peace officer. So that's kind of where we're going to start today's episode 1 at. So I'm going to be throwing a lot of information out here. So please, if there are any questions later on, or I'm not explaining something as thoroughly as I can, because I'm trying to do it in this little 10-minute mark, leave me a comment or something like that so I can try to get back to it or clear it up for you, because I want everything to be very clear. Okay, let's go. So he should not have been found guilty of count 4, okay? This lying to a peace officer thing. And let me explain to you why. So when an individual is charged with a felony, there is a piece of paper that is called the information. The information lists all the counts that an individual is being charged with. Inside of the information attached to those little counts, it'll tell you, in a small little blurb, basically, it'll say what the state thinks that this person did to violate that law. So if it was, I'm just using a hypothetical here. If it was CCW, if it was a CCW, they would say on such and such date, let's say on January 3rd, my Detroit lawyer was found with a pistol on her waist, and she is not a CPL holder, and therefore it's CCW, blah, 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 something to that effect, okay? So it'll spell it out so that I'll know what I did to be charged. Oh, that's what they're saying I did. They're saying I did that shit, so they're saying I broke the law, so they're saying they're charging me with this. It's called the information, okay? So in the case of Michael Jackson Bolanos, count 4, which is the lying to a peace officer, which is a high court misdemeanor. Keep that in mind. High court misdemeanor, okay? This is how it reads, verbatim from the information. After being informed by Patrick Lane / Stephen Ford of the Detroit Police Department that an officer was conducting a criminal investigation, did knowingly and willfully make a statement or statements to the officers that he knew was false or misleading regarding the following material fact or facts relating to the investigation that he committed larcenies or attempted larcenies from motor vehicles on October 21st, 2023. And the officer was conducting a criminal investigation for larceny from a motor vehicle. All right, keep that in mind. The most important part about what this all says is that the officer was conducting a criminal investigation for larceny from a motor vehicle. Now, why is that important to keep in mind? Well, the first reason why that's important to keep in mind is because that actually never happened. Never, ever, ever, ever was there a full-on investigation of larcenies from a motor vehicle. That never happened. And that is how they chose to word that. They said that he was guilty of lying to an officer about this entire investigation. There was never an investigation about larcenies from a motor vehicle. That never happened. We did 5 weeks of trial. There was never an officer who took the stand and said, yeah, I was in charge of investigating larcenies from a motor vehicle, blah, blah, blah. There was never a civilian witness who took the stand and said, oh yeah, that was my car that Halloween candy came from. That never happened ever. There was never an investigation that ever occurred that was about larcenies from a motor vehicle. As a matter of fact, Patrick Lane and Stephen Ford are homicide detectives. So that in and of itself tells you that when they were interrogating Michael Jackson Bolanos, they were never interrogating him about larcenies from motor vehicles because they're homicide detectives. The only thing that they're ever going to question anybody about is homicides. That's how that works. Okay, so with that being said, the entire investigation was about what? The investigation of the murder of Samantha Wall, right? Okay. Well, then the question is, so how could Michael Jackson Bolanos have lied to officers about the investigation that they were doing of larcenies into motor vehicles when the officers who interrogated him were homicide detectives and were only ever investigating the homicide of Samantha Wall and were never investigating a larceny from a motor vehicle? So if the thing you're saying that he lied about never actually happened, then how can he be guilty for that? That would be like me saying that you stole my unicorn from the circus, but I never actually had a unicorn at the circus. How could that have happened then? I mean, not a perfect, not an on-point analogy, right? I'm just shooting one off the top. But nonetheless, if you understand what's going on there, then you understand how that's not possible. That's not possible. There was not an investigation about larcenies, so he can't be guilty of lying or disassembling or disrupting an investigation about larcenies because there was never one to begin with. Crazy. But words have to make sense in the practice of law. Every word means something. So the fact that they wrote the information like that means something. And the fact that the jury was never presented with one scintilla of evidence to support that there was an investigation of larcenies from a motor vehicle, that also means something. So how did the jury end up finding him guilty? Well, let's talk about the jury verdict form. I'm trying to hurry because time is ticking. The jury verdict form, it simply said count 4, lying to a peace officer, guilty, not guilty. The jury wasn't even given the information that what they were being asked to find guilty or not guilty was not just lying to an officer. It was lying to an officer regarding an investigation of larcenies from motor vehicles. Without that information, the jury just went ahead and said guilty. That's not true though. That's not what the actual charge was. The charge was the investigation of larcenies from a motor vehicle. I think that if the jury was actually given all of that information, they quite probably, more than likely, would not have found him guilty of that because somebody would have been sitting there going, what investigation was there about larcenies from a motor vehicle? The only thing we've heard for the last 5 weeks was the investigation about the murder of Samantha Wall. So what are they talking about? What was the investigation about the larcenies from motor vehicles? I think at some point somebody on that jury would have asked that question and therefore they would have come to the conclusion that they can't find him guilty of that because that never happened. So this is, in a very quick way, episode 1. I didn't even get all the information I wanted to get out of episode 1, but we're hitting our 10-minute mark, which means I'm talking too much, or I just need to explain things more clearly. I'm not really sure. You guys will let me know. Hopefully I did a good job. Stay tuned. Episode 2 coming soon of who the fuck decided to incarcerate Bolanos. Okay? Thanks.